Hello, this is Rose Diamonds from Tribe in Transition, and I'm also a member of the Silver Tent. And this is the second video I'm making around the theme of fear and how fear may be impacting you through this coronavirus crisis, and how you can support yourself to move through and transform your fear. And in this video today, I'm going to be talking about the different dimensions of the crisis and how these can be stimulating fear in people in different ways. And the reason why I think this is important is I don't want to scare you more by taking you deeper into your fear, but I think it's important because what I'm trying to spread here is understanding, tolerance, and compassion. Because we can get really, the thing is that we're all living through the same crisis, but each of us has a different story, a different interpretation of what this crisis is about. And so when we're frightened, we can get very much isolated in our own little world. And that's part of the crisis as well. We're being asked to self-isolate. We're being asked to distance from people. We're being asked to separate. But we don't need to be separated also in the mind with our own stories. So if we can understand a little bit more about what another person's story might be and how it may be different from yours, you can prevent the tendency to judge others. You know, that'll become clear as I'm going through. So yeah, this video is made in the interest of supporting understanding, tolerance, and compassion. So the first kind of fear that you may be feeling is fear for your own health, or fear for the health of your loved ones. That's what on the surface this coronavirus crisis is about. It's about a virus which can make us sick and possibly even die. So, you know, and the other reason why this is so important is because when our fear arises, first of all, it's a natural animal instinctual response, which is nothing to be ashamed of. But also our fear can point to those areas in our life where we have more healing to do. So it can be a gift and an opportunity when fear comes up, when you can be aware of what that fear is hitting on in you. You can identify it, you can name it. Then you have a much better chance of healing that aspect because you're making it conscious. So with health and well-being, obviously there are some of us who have much bigger health challenges than others. That can be the main channel for growth and healing in a lifetime. Having to come to terms with the limitation of having a health challenge. But if you do have health challenges, existing health challenges, obviously, when something like the coronavirus comes along, it can really make you afraid. So for each of these different types of fear I'm going to mention, I'm also going to mention a remedy or an antidote. So the remedy or antidote to being frightened for your own health and well-being and that of your loved ones is, first of all, self-responsibility, which we're all being asked to exercise, to take particular precautions around to keep ourselves as well as we possibly can be, and to actually also help others to stay as well as they can be so that we don't spread germs. That's the first one, self-responsibility. And then the other one is to practice inner wholeness. So even if you are someone who has a lot of physical health challenges, you can still practice bringing your attention away from what is not working. And this is true for all of us. Bring your attention away from what is not working and focusing on where and how you are already whole. And all of us are always and already whole. In the core of our beings, we're always whole. So when your fear arises around your health, bring your focus back, your attention back to how you are already whole and the source of your wholeness, which is deep within. Meditation, of course, is an excellent strategy, practice for finding the inner wholeness within. Now, the second way that you may be experiencing fear is through fear of lack, fear of the fact that this has been showing up in people's, some people's stockpiling, going out and buying heaps of food, stocking up their freezers, stocking up their cupboards. This stems from a fear of lack, a fear of limitation, a fear that there's not going to be enough to go around. And unfortunately, when we're hit by this fear, we can get quite self-interested and think that we've got to take care of ourselves. And this is one of the dangers in an epidemic where we're being taught to, encouraged to isolate. So even though we may be keeping our physical distance from people, we can still practice connecting, remembering that we are part of one life, one humanity, one world. And so the antidote for this fear of limitation is, first of all, moderation, only to take what we need, not to let our fear run away with us, think we've got to go and buy up the whole shop, take what we need. And secondly, is not to entertain the notion of limitation. I personally don't live in a world where I'm seeing limitation. I live in a world of abundance. We can choose to withdraw our mind from the fear of limitation and focus on abundance. So start to focus on what you do have. Start to focus on the ways in which you are lucky, privileged. If you're a white Westerner, then you are privileged in so many ways. Or look outside, just look outside your window, go out into nature, see how abundant nature is. But remind yourself when you start to feel this sense of lack. Breathe, expand, remember, be grateful for what you do have, and practice moderation. The third area where you may be experiencing fear is fear of financial hardship. Now, I know this is very real and true for many people, even though the virus crisis is still very new. Already, people's businesses and livelihoods are being affected. Many people live very close to the edge financially, so they don't have a lot of, they don't have money in the bank that they can draw on in a time of crisis. So obviously, when something like this happens, we can go into a state of panic about not having enough money. So whilst recognizing with all these sources of fear that they are real, the only thing I can say really about about financial hardship is that I've been through some very difficult financial times myself. I have chosen to live on the edge financially for quite a long periods of my life. So I know what that's like to not have a home, to not have any money in the bank, to not actually know where your next meal is coming. But for myself, I have never ever in my life had a night where I didn't have anywhere to sleep, or had a day where I didn't have food. And there's some way in which living close to the edge financially can open you to a whole new world of abundance. You start to realize that money and material things don't necessarily fill you up, don't necessarily give you that sense of wholeness that you're really seeking. And that those things, that sense of wholeness, happiness, contentment, peace, true wealth, can only come from within. So sometimes going through periods of hardship can be a hard lesson, but a really valuable lesson in learning to connect with what is true and valuable and the true source of wealth within. And the other aspect of that is that I found when I've been through those times that I'm always taken care of. So somehow, again, not having many resources can throw you into the arms of the universe, where you will find that you are carried and taken care of, and you build a whole new trust in life. So, and the fourth aspect of potential fear in this situation is fear of losing our civil liberties, fear of losing our freedom, fear of being controlled by an external authority. And we are actually being asked to relinquish our civil liberties. We're being asked to stay at home, not to go out. Our civil meeting places are being closed down, the schools are being closed down, libraries, restaurants, all the rest, our lives have changed dramatically in a very short period of time. And for some of us, and certainly that's been true of me, this is the place where it hits hardest. I start to fear that I'm being controlled. I start to fear that can spin off into all sorts of catastrophic stories. So the antidote to this fear that you're losing your external freedom, that your external freedom are being stripped away from you, is to start to exercise inner freedom, to free the mind, to free the spirit from the mind. So when these stories start to come up, we have a choice. Am I going to feed that fear? Am I going to feed that story? Or am I going to remove my attention from that fear, from that story, and put it onto a story which is more about trust, love, abundance, or even, to come to a place where I don't know what's really happening here. I don't know what's going to happen. And can I rest? Can I be content? Can I be at peace in that place of not knowing? The fifth area of fear is the fear of death and dying. I actually think this is what's driving a lot of the fear and panic in this crisis. And this is a very big subject. I just don't want to sort of minimize it, but just to say that if you haven't had a lot of deaths in your life, you haven't had a lot of opportunity to really sit with death, then you probably will still be afraid of death and dying. I think there's an epidemic of unprocessed grief in our world, in our Western world. And it's only when we really come to terms with our own death, because we're all going to die, whether it's tomorrow or in 30 years or whatever, we're all going to die. It's part of being human. It's part of the natural cycle of life and death, part of the natural cycles of the soul. It's something we're going to have to come to terms with at one time or another, so why not now? And coming to terms with our own death, facing into our own death, first of all, has enormous gifts within it. But it also means facing into those unlived aspects of ourselves. Mostly we don't want to die because it's still things that we want to do. So facing into our own death, sitting with death, is actually a great motivator as well for really fully living. In fact, I don't think that we can fully live until we've faced into our own death. So this is a huge opportunity to live fully. Today, this moment, may be all we've got. So live it fully, be 100% present. The next area of potential fear within this crisis is fear of systems collapse. So, I've already mentioned financial hardship. It's quite clear that this isn't just a a one country phenomenon that's happening. This is a global crisis. The global economy is shaky. Our health service is overwhelmed. Our schools are closing down. So, you know, the life that we have known at the moment has finished. We're in a transition. So all the aspects of fear I'm talking about now and the antidotes are all part of finding our way through a transition. We're right in the transition now. We've left the old. We haven't yet arrived at the other end. We're in a new situation where we're having to find our way. It's an unknown situation. So if you're frightened of systems collapse, your mind is likely to go off into big stories, big fear stories. How am I going to cope when? What am I going to do in a few months' time when? So the remedy or antidote to that is just to bring yourself back into the present. Be here now. This is the most important skill you can practice throughout this whole situation, is be here now, present in the body, enjoying the moment, letting go of the mind. And along with this, next aspect of fear is fear of stepping out of the comfort zone into the unknown and not being in control. So if you've been on a spiritual or healing path for a long time, or you have spiritual practice, you'll know that these are the skills that we practice all the time. It's and so, you know, these skills may be standing you in good stead now that we're faced with this threatening outer reality. But stepping out of the unknown, stepping out of your comfort zone into the unknown, is actually a very alive place to be. It's where the greatest growth can take place. You know, we all have our comfort zones. We like to snuggle up our blankets, watch Netflix, eat chocolate, whatever it is you do to comfort yourself. We all like to do that from time to time, just disappear into our own little worlds. But when that comfort zone is stripped away and you're kind of feeling more of your own raw vulnerability and your full humanness, that's when the greatest growth can happen. So with all of these these all the aspects of fear, one thing that really helps is to name them. So the next time you feel yourself, you're in the unknown, say, oh, I'm in the unknown now. I don't know. And it's okay. I'm okay. It's okay not to know. And get your feet fully grounded on the earth. Make contact with the floor. Breathe into your body. Feel your body. That's what's real in this moment right now. You can support yourself through the unknown just by these very, very simple strategies of staying connected with the earth, staying connected with your body, breathing, expanding, emptying your mind, letting go of your stories. And connected with this is the fear of stepping outside of consensus reality. So, for example, if the majority of people are mostly afraid of their own health or the health of their loved ones, and you're someone who's frightened about systems collapse, it may be that there's no connection between these two. It seems at times that you're speaking a different language. So if your fear is different from what appear to be the majority of people's fears, you may feel that you've just stepped out of the world, really, on your own, and you may feel like you're off on some cold, dark ledge on your own, very isolated, and nobody else can see what you're seeing, and nobody else is worried about what you're worried about. That can be really scary. It's like being the only person awake in the world. And that's when the intolerance can come in as well. If one person's fearful about this and one person's fearful about that, and you can't really talk about it, you can't really exchange, then intolerance can easily arise, and misunderstanding, and that exaggerates the isolation and the disconnects. So what we want to do now is to connect, to find that place of connection, that human connection. We're all human beings. We're all going to be afraid at times. We're all in the same boat. How can we connect? How can we drop our judgments? How can we stop having prejudices against each other? How can we learn to listen to what other people are afraid of, to what other people are experiencing and going through, even if it's different to our experience? So, if you're one of these people, at times you feel that you've kind of stepped out of the consensual reality, you've stepped out of the main story, that you're off on a different story, then find yourself a buddy, find yourself somebody who does speak your language, find yourself someone who does understand your bigger picture, and just stay connected with them. Just one person can make all the difference. And then the final aspect of fear I want to talk about is fear of not knowing what the truth is or what's real. And in a sense, in the political sphere, we've been living in this kind of post-truth reality for a long time now. It's very difficult to discern what's real. And when you don't know what's true, what's real, it can feel very crazy making at times, because stories that you're hearing may be very different from what you are experiencing internally in your inner reality through your intuition. It's it seems like a clash of realities. You're being told this story, but you actually feel that this is true. So this is an amazing opportunity to practice staying connected with your inner truth, your authentic truth. And you may need to be careful who you express that with, because if you're feeling kind of quite vulnerable and delicate about having a truth which is different from the mainstream, you don't want to go blurting it out with a lot of people who are going to shut you down. Again, you need to find people to talk with, to share with, to explore with, who are on a similar page to you, to begin with anyway, so that you get that support for your inner truth. But ultimately, your inner truth is your inner truth. And part of the practice of self-mastery is learning to be able to stand in your authentic inner truth, no matter what. To know, to connect with that inner knowing. So I hope that this video has given you some ways, some ideas and ways that you can turn around some of those sources of fear, those aspects of fear that you may be experiencing or that others around you may be experiencing, and to use them as opportunities for healing, growth, connection, understanding, tolerance, and compassion. Crisis and transition always offer us these opportunities. We're really brought to our own edge. When we feel our vulnerability, we are at our growing edge. We have the opportunity to evolve. And that is the opportunity we're being offered right now through what appears to be a very threatening crisis. And I believe that each of us really makes a difference. If we can turn our minds around from lack, limitation, threat to abundance, gratitude, opportunity, gifts, we can turn this around. Thanks for listening.